This is the story of the butterfly and the stone. Once upon a time, there was a hard, heavy gray stone who spent his days sitting in the forest thinking about how hard it was to be hard and heavy and gray. Then one day, a butterfly came to land on the stone. Wow, the stone thought. She's so soft and light and colorful. The butterfly was happy to be appreciated by the stone, who was uniquely positioned to notice her charms. A few times the butterfly lifted off, dancing on the air, flapping her rainbow wings, and this delighted the stone. Then she would land on the stone again, and he would feel her warm, delicate touch on his surface, and this delighted him even more. The butterfly was delighted, too, to bring such joy and to feel so recognized. For several days the butterfly would return to the stone, and the stone came to look forward to her visits. So much so that at some point the stone couldn't remember what else he'd ever done but wait for the arrival of the butterfly. And every time she visited, it would brighten the stone's day. He was so happy to be a place for her to land, an audience for her beauty, that it began to give him a sense of purpose that he had never known before. One day, the butterfly asked the stone to come fly with her, but the stone couldn't fly. He didn't know why. He wondered if he used to be able to fly and had forgotten. He tried as hard as he could to flap his wings, but he just sat still on the ground. He felt so heavy and worried that even if he could fly, he might land so hard that he would break. The butterfly was disappointed. She had wanted so much to fly with her new friend. But she also felt sad for the stone, and she decided to spend that whole day sitting with him to make him feel better. The next day she did the same, and the next after that. And the stone did feel better when she was there, but he could tell that the butterfly missed her flying, and he was sad for her too. So he tried again as hard as he could to flap and flap, to imagine himself floating lightly and easily on the breeze above like she did. But it was no use. He couldn't manage to move. So finally he said to the butterfly that she should resume her flying and come to visit him from time to time. He couldn't bear to see her so despondent. The butterfly was thankful. She told the stone that she looked forward to seeing him soon, and then she took flight. When the stone saw the butterfly flying again, he started to cry. He was so touched by her freedom, by her ease on the wind, by her ability to dance and share her color, and he wished so much that he could go with her. The butterfly had not made it very far when she heard the stones sobbing and turned back. She didn't want to leave him like that, knowing that he was in such misery, but she didn't know how to help him. When she landed again, the stone stopped his crying for a moment, and his strength began to return. But each time she took flight, she would hear his cries again, and she wouldn't be able to leave without feeling bad for the stone. She wanted so much for him to be okay, but she knew that she would have to fly again eventually, and so did he. The stone was embarrassed by his sadness. He didn't want to stop the butterfly from her beautiful flying, so he decided that he would do for her the one thing that he knew how to do as a stone. He would be still and quiet while she flew. He would protect himself with his hardness, and he would wait for her in the same place so she would always know where to find him. When the butterfly next flew, the stone wished her a good flight and then was quiet. She paused and checked back over her shoulder to make sure he was okay, and the stone was convincing. He held his place without a sound. The butterfly was happy that the stone was not crying, and she continued on her flight. She hoped that the stone would spend his day doing whatever had made him happy before he'd met her. While she was away, the stone began to wonder about where she went and what she did between her visits. Were there other stones she liked to land on? And were they fighting to hold their tears back too? Or were there some stones who could fly? Or did the butterfly do mysterious, important things in the air that a stone couldn't even understand? The butterfly continued to visit him every day, and the stone continued to hold his silence when she took flight. But he began to always feel like he was missing something. All he thought about was when she would return and why he couldn't go with her. He thought again about how hard it was to be hard and heavy and gray. Soon the butterfly's flights grew longer. Instead of coming every day, she would come every second day or third. The stone was desperate. He didn't want the butterfly to stop visiting him, but he didn't want to cry to make her stay. One day, when the butterfly was taking flight, the stone lost his composure and let out a pathetic whimper. The butterfly flew back to him at once. "What's the matter?" she asked. And the stone told her everything. About his fears and insecurities, about the way he missed her, about the sad days that he spent waiting for her, about how hard it was to be hard and heavy and gray. The butterfly was sad to hear all these things, and she cried. She felt guilty for all her flying. She wanted to stay and help the stone feel better again, but she also knew that she belonged in the air, and she was running out of the strength she needed to keep taking flight. She needed support and encouragement to be borne aloft on the breeze, but the stone was beginning to make her feel heavy like he was. When she said this to the stone, he felt horrible. He hadn't realized that his heaviness might be contagious, and he didn't want the butterfly to be grounded by it, because, after all, she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. So the stone resolved, once and for all, to maintain his stony face, no matter how long or how far the butterfly flew. The butterfly was grateful to the stone for granting her this freedom from her guilt, and she began to feel okay about flying again. At first, she came back every day like before, but soon there were more 2s and 3s, and then occasionally a week or a month. Whenever the butterfly would come land on the stone, he would feel alive again and grateful. But eventually, the time came when he couldn't remember the last time she'd come to visit, and the stone understood that he had only ever had 2 choices: to hold the butterfly down or to lose her. Neither of these choices seemed acceptable to the stone. He couldn't bring himself to take away the butterfly's flight, but once he knew about her, he didn't know what to do without her anymore. He spent his days holding on to her memory, trying to imagine her delicate touch on his surface, trying to picture her rainbow colors in his mind, hoping that she was somewhere twirling beautifully above the forest. But gradually, he slipped back into his thoughts from before the butterfly had come, and he returned to spending his days thinking about how hard it was to be hard and heavy and gray. Only now sometimes he thought about how it must be hard to be soft and light and colorful too.